Hi, this is Annie Grace, and I'm answering readers' questions. And today I have a question. What do you do about missing the euphoria and the high of drinking? And this is such a great question. And I think people generally expect me to answer this question with something like, okay, well, if you do this specific breathing technique, it kind of makes you feel high, or maybe makes you a little dizzy, or maybe there's a certain type of tea that if you drink it just in this right mood, or maybe it's a warm bubble bath and all that stuff. Like, I'm here to tell you, do whatever you want to do. All of that stuff might be amazing. It might totally scratch the itch for you, or it might not. I don't know. And so I actually don't have a list of all this different stuff you can do. And you can find that anywhere. You can, join us at thealcoholexperiment.com, log in, just ask people what they do in place of alcohol. You'll get tons of beautiful responses. And it's just going to be, such a cool thing because there's infinite number of things. And of course, I don't know you, so I don't know exactly what is going to scratch your itch or give you that thing that you're looking for. But I do know humanity, and I do know human beings in the sense of how we work when it comes to things that are addictive specifically. And we do things to fill our own needs, right? And so I think it's really important to look at, why are we drinking in the first place? Are we drinking to feel our need for variety? Our need for things to be different and fun and exciting? Are we drinking to fill our need for certainty? Our need to feel like we have some control, and even if everything's falling apart, well, I know I can come home to my glass of wine. I have a very predictable way it will make me feel. I know that I can kind of numb out on the couch and it will make my thinking slower. And so I have that certainty. What are we drinking for? Are we drinking to feel part of the group? Are we drinking to meet our need of connection? And we believe that it can't happen outside of a drink. Like, what is that thing that we are drinking to meet? And then address that with other things that might meet that need. And so that's the first point I want to make. And that's really important, is because we all are drinking and we're all trying to get and chase that euphoria or that high or that feeling for so many different reasons. The second point I want to make is, if you're still drinking, I want you to do something that I did many times. It's a fascinating experiment. Next time you have that drink, I want you to get a timer, like literally on your phone or on your watch, time how long that euphoria lasts. And let me know. Comment below, send us an email, whatever you want to do. Let us know how long that euphoria lasts. Now, I've had hundreds and hundreds of people do this. It is generally between 18 and 22 minutes. And so I think the better question, because we're not going to be able to replace that without another chemical that is going to change our brain patterns, right? Alcohol is an addictive chemical because it overstimulates the pleasure center of our brain, which we might think, oh, that's a great thing. I love that idea. Of course, that's why we drink. We drink to overstimulate the pleasure center of our brain. The problem is that our brain reacts by trying to maintain balance or homeostasis, and it actually turns down the pleasure that we were feeling from alcohol. And by the way, turns down the pleasure on everything else that we're experiencing pleasure in our lives. And so we don't feel as happy after a drink. So time that drink, see how long that euphoria takes, and then notice how bad you feel afterwards. So the way alcohol works is you probably have 20 minutes of that blood alcohol content rising. This is when alcohol is acting as a stimulant. And then you trade that for 2 to 3 hours of blood alcohol content falling. That's when alcohol is acting as a depressant. And that's when you feel uneasy, unsure, uncertain, tired. You might not feel good in your own skin. You feel anxiety, you feel depressed, all of those sorts of feelings. And so what we don't really associate that with is the drink, because it just made us feel so good. So our brain does not make that connection. And we often reach for another drink, which if you time that next drink, it will be less time of euphoria than the first drink. So there's two things that alcohol does. And I guess this is the third point. There's two things that alcohol does that we can't argue with. It's going to give you that 20 minutes of euphoria. It will do that. It will give you that buzz, that high, whatever it is. It will give you that 20 minutes of euphoria. Number one. Number two, it will numb you. If you drink enough alcohol, it will literally turn off your brain to the point where you're unconscious. They used to use it in surgery for anesthetic because of its numbing properties. So it will do these two things. We cannot argue with that. Everything else we think alcohol does, by the way, I have a very compelling case, which you can find, in the alcohol experiment. Again, it's always free at alcoholexperiment.com, but there's a very compelling case of like, none of those other things are true, but these two things are true. These two things we can't argue with. It will numb you. It will give you that 20 minutes of euphoria. So I think the best response I have to this question is, at the end of the day, if you can't find anything to replace it, and those bubble baths aren't working, or the yerba mate tea just isn't doing it for you, and you've timed it and it is 20 minutes and you just are desperate for that 20 minutes, you just have to look in the mirror and ask yourself, what problem do I want? Do I want the problem of not having that 20 minutes of euphoria in my life? Or do I want the problem of having to pick up the pieces? Because inevitably, at least for me, that 20 minutes, that one drink led to 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 drinks. And so you just have to be really honest, like, it does this. And is it worth it? Is it worth it for you in your life? And I'm not suggesting that you go and use willpower and white knuckle your way through letting it go. I'm really suggesting that there's a much better way than that. There's a way that you can, get a lot more knowledge, where you can learn something new. You can actually feel differently about alcohol. You can feel as if you don't even want it anymore. And so I am certainly suggesting that process. And that process, again, can be found at alcoholexperiment.com. But more importantly, I am suggesting that you take a hard look at what you are willing to give up in your life for that 20 minutes. I can't argue with you. There's 20 minutes there. It's going to feel like a chemically induced high, because that's what it is. And are you willing to pay the price? And that's the question that only you can answer.